Hi, I'm Amber Bell, and this is Real Agriculture. I am here speaking with Dr. Curtis Russell, who is the Senior Program Specialist of Health Protection for Public Health Ontario. So, welcome, Dr. Russell. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So, you're here to talk to us about ticks. We're in springtime. There's a lot of stuff on social media about ticks showing up and people wondering what is a tick. And of course, that brings up the topic of Lyme disease. So, what is the current prevalence of ticks carrying Lyme disease at this point in time?
So a big thing to notice, we do have different species of ticks in Ontario, but when we're talking about ticks transmitting Lyme disease to people, the only tick that we really, or the primary tick that we're concerned about is called the black-legged tick. It used to be called the deer tick. So those are still the same, that's the same tick. So it's the black-legged tick that we're concerned about. If you look, those ticks, they like brushy wooded areas, and with, our warmer climates, warmer winters, we do see them spreading. So the main areas that we're concerned about them are along the north shores of Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, St. Lawrence River. But that being said, they have spread, good chunks of southern Ontario, and we do even see pockets up around the Thunder Bay, northwestern Lake of the Woods area of Ontario. So we kind of say that too. And these ticks, while they feed on humans, they also feed on migratory birds. So they can be in other parts of the province too. So it's always good to be careful wherever you are, especially in brushy wooded areas.
Okay. And are there certain times of year or environmental conditions when producers should be more cautious about tick exposure?
So with ticks, the one thing people always think is, middle of January, there's no ticks out. We do find though, if it's above zero and there's no snow out, they can be out. Now they're quite lethargic, don't move very fast, but they can be out. When we look at ticks, one thing people really have to be, they're surprised about is how small they are. So we usually typically see they have a intricate 2-year life cycle. So, and it overlaps a bit with the different stages. So we have eggs and then we go larvae and then we go nymphs, which are kind of like the teenagers, and then we have adults. The larvae, which are super tiny, typically don't have the bacteria in them. Once a tick, if it is infected and lays their eggs, they don't transmit it over. So that's nice. So when the larvae come out, they don't have it. The nymphs, they have to feed and pick it up from a small mammal or a
Hmm.
mammal host. So the adults are typically out spring and fall, and they're about the size of a sesame seed, which is still pretty small. So that's when we see a lot of the ticks out. However, when we look at a lot of our cases, they happen in the summer months because that's when the nymphs are out. So the nymphs are about the size of a poppy seed.
Oh, wow.
So picture something, lightly brown colored, the size of a poppy seed in your hairline, your armpit, or some of your other spots I can't mention. They're really hard to notice. So that's the months when we see a lot of our exposures is because people don't notice them on you.
Hmm.
And that's the other big thing with Lyme disease risk is if a black-legged tick is biting you and if it's infected, it has to be biting you and feeding for about 24 hours before it can transmit the bacteria. So typically with an adult, hopefully people will notice something that bigger on them, but the nymphs, because they're so small, they don't get noticed in the summertime.
Right. Can you feel it when they bite you?
Usually not. Usually some people have said they can. Some people say it really hurts, but in general, when ticks bite you, they inject an analgesic so you can't feel them and an anti-coagulant to keep the blood flowing. So, because they don't want you to know they're there, because typically when they're feeding on a host, they're going to be there for days.
Right. And is there a way to tell if it's a black-legged tick versus some of the other species?
There is certain ways, like in general, the two ticks that we mainly see in Ontario are the black-legged tick or the American dog tick. In the nymphal stage, it's really hard to tell apart. Adults, the American dog ticks do have white markings on them, while the black-legged tick is kind of dark brown, reddish brown kind of color. However, if you do get a tick on you and you are concerned, there's a academics that we've partnered with called through Bishop's University called etick.ca.
Okay.
And so they have a website, but they also have an app. And so if you actually find a tick on you, you can actually submit a picture of the tick, and usually within 24 hours, they'll tell you what it is.
Oh, wow. That's
But that
great.
being said, if you're being, if you've been exposed to ticks and you're concerned about your health, it's always good to see your physician.
Right. What are some preventative measures that farmers can take to reduce the risk of tick bites for themselves or their families?
Right. So big thing is these ticks don't really crawl to you. They actually climb up onto the vegetation and wait for you to walk by. Kind of like when you go hiking, you get burrs on you. So big things are is not to come in contact with these ticks. However, especially farmers, you actually are out in the brush clearing your fence lines or doing things. So big things for personal protection is wear long sleeve, light colored clothing with everything tucked in. That way, if the ticks do get on you, they have to crawl a long way before they can get into your Sleeves are that. And we say light colored because they are darker. Hopefully you can notice them on you. That being said, too, you can then wear insect repellents, usually DEET, Icardin. Some places also sell clothing with impregnated permethrin right in the clothing, which works also really well. So putting that on you also helps. And then what we say is once you come out of the environment, come out of the brush or whatever that is to do a tick check. So stand there out, out by your truck, your tractor, and kind of have look everywhere you can to see if there's any ticks on you. And we call it the buddy system, but have someone check the areas you can't check so behind you. Once you get home, put those clothing either in the wash or put them right in the dryer because the high heat of the dryer will kill the ticks. Have a shower. I usually say have a shower or have a bath because then all your clothes are off and then you can check all the areas you can't check. The ticks, they'll go anywhere on you, but they will bite mainly along your hairline, your armpits, your back, your buttocks, your groin kind of regions, back of your knees. That's where you'll see them. But big thing is to do those tick checks. If you then do have a tick on you, take a picture, submit it to eTick. And then if you are concerned about your health, when you see your physician, let them know that you were exposed to ticks.
Okay, that's great. And so the country song is a legitimate good piece of advice then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
The running joke is we always say use the buddy system, but you can discern who your buddy is going to be to check you.
that's good to know. So are there any ongoing research initiatives or has there been any developments in tick control and Lyme disease?
So we're always looking, we partner a lot of times with the US. The US has a larger numbers of Lyme disease and blacklegged ticks. So we always look at them to see where their cases are, what's happening, what's new with them. And they do a lot of research into control. The tricky part with control these ticks is they are down in the leaf litter. So to try to, in a big forested area, so to try to do blanket controls for them can be tricky. That's why we talk about the personal protection is really big. And then you can also do personal, property protection to try to reduce the ticks coming into your property. So, if you are adjacent to a forested woodlot or something like that, make sure your lawn is cut short. The biggest thing for these black-legged ticks, and ticks in general, is if the only thing that really kills them is that they dry out, they die. So that's why they're in the leaf litter. When it gets hot, they go down into the leaf litter where it's moist and they stay down in there. So that's why we say brushy wooded areas. So try to keep your lawn cut short. And then sometimes we say try to put about a meter width of wood chips between your lawn and the forested area. So, it's a kind of like a dry barrier that they then don't like to come across. Same thing too with your kids and that. Try to have their playgrounds and stuff not right in the wooded areas.
Right. That's really good advice. And are there any common myths about ticks and Lyme disease that you'd like to address?
Um, I don't know if it's common myth, but one thing I think it's really, I've said it before, but is how small these things are. People just think, oh, they're really big. It's a spider on me. I'm going to notice it. They are very tiny and hard to notice. We've always heard stories of someone's like, I was trying to wash the dirt off my kid. And you're like, well, that wasn't dirt. That was the tick that was stuck on there. So they're really small. They're not everywhere. They're in those brushy wooded areas. And just when you're in those areas, still go into them, but just that personal protection can really help protect you.
So how far from a forested area will they travel into grass?
Oh, they'll travel a few feet into the grass, and not
Okay.
that they want to be there. And same thing too, because migratory birds, they can drop them off here or there. Also, same thing too if you have a pet. Consult with your local veterinarian because they can usually give them drops or medication that can reduce the ticks on them.
hmm Okay, well, that's great. It's a lot of information that I didn't know. I know I learned a lot, so I'm hoping a lot of our listeners as well will be able to pick up on some of this and hopefully be able to protect themselves from Lyme disease throughout the summer going into this next growing season. So thank you, Dr. Curtis Russell. And that was, yes, Dr. Curtis Russell with Public Health Ontario.